last console test are stating that Switch 2 is behind a Series S but ahead of the PS4 as expected, right? Like, no, it's not. Oh, whatever, dude. And what last console test? Which one? From where? Who? What games? Right? Mentioning that all game that can run at 60 FPS on Series S would run on S2, things that won't be the case for PS4. Can't wait for your next excuse. Yeah. No one is saying that. And seeing as how you provided no source, the evidence we have from video and trusted sources already dismisses baseless claims like the one you just made. You know, like, come on. These are the fanboys, man, that I have to argue against, right? Like, I'm compelled to just, like, dive deep into this. Dude, are you serious? They state Switch 2 GPU is behind Series S and CPU is just ahead of PS4 Go. Bleep, look on the net. Go look on the net. I don't know why there's all those asterisks. Go fuck look at the net? Go ass look at the net? Like, what? What what is that? Even Wild Hearts devs state that Switch 2 is more like Series S than a PS4. Every single day we get proof, but you still be that silly. So hearsay again. Fast Fusion was patched about 2 weeks ago, and Digital Foundry covered the new pure mode setting. This is what I really wanted to talk about after all this time, right? Um, Pure mode setting, which shows the game running at settings that makes the PS3 makes PS3's WipEout HD game look incredible by comparison. WipEout HD lacks level of detail, so everything on the track is always rendered at maximum model complexity. The game is almost totally locked at 260 FPS, though Digital Foundry did claim that they could crater FPS momentarily on PS3 to a low of 45 FPS, and I'm assuming a minimum resolution scale of 1600 by 1080p. Because Wipeout only scales resolution on the horizontal axis in 32 pixel increments per Studio Liverpool, though DF never mentioned what the lowest resolution scale was and never properly covered this title. Even when they did cover this game on PS3 through the PS4 remaster, right when they looked at the Omega collection, Digital Foundry never mentioned the game renders less than 1080p, but they did mention performance slows down. Studio Liverpool mentioned in an interview with Eurogamer that their resolution scaler is lazy, never predicting slowdown, but managing resolution after slowdown is detected. Fast Fusion scales on both axes and can still have some slowdown in the DLSS-enabled mode per Brazil Pixels testing, which is, we're commenting under a Brazil Pixel video. DF did not mention slowdown in their analysis, or analyses, multiple plural, right? They did mention numerous cutbacks to visuals, and that Shinin mentioned a dynamic 1440p resolution, but DF only measured resolution slightly below 1080p, according to Oliver McKenzie in the podcast, right? In Fast Fusion's new pure mode, right? So it's like, dude, this game is rendering below 1080p. I mean, it is hitting 60 FPS, but the visuals are markedly below that of Wipeout HD, right? And it's a very similar looking game, actually. I didn't even realize how similar it was until I actually went back, well, first of all, looking at Fast Fusion more closely, because they zoomed in on some stuff, and I was just kind of like looking for things instead of like the actual design. Like the ships are totally different. It's crazy to look at how similar the track design is. Like actually down to the little curb nub things that are aligned with the track walls, which also look pretty remarkably similar across the two games. So like they're 2 generations apart, and we're talking about radically different hardware, right? PS3 versus Switch 2. PS3 should be nowhere near Switch 2 in visual quality or performance, and yet here we have an example of a racing game that is struggling very hard, and it clearly is, right? Now, the only thing, the saving grace for Shinin's game, Fast Fusion on Switch 2, is the fact that all of the calculations for ambient occlusion, global illumination, and That's pretty much it, right? Like are happening in real time, right? Like the lighting and shading and stuff like that. Well, I mean, shadows are of course done in real time on PS3 and WipEout as well. But as far as like more sophisticated lighting, that is all pre-calculated. It's baked right into the textures and stuff in WipEout HD, where it is calculated in real time in Fast Fusion. But Fast Fusion also relies on level of detail. And when they zoomed in, Digital Foundry used the zoom in feature when they were talking about the upgrade to this game in the podcast. So there's a bookmark that you can go to or a chapter marker. And ultimately, when you actually, when you do the pixel peeping, or I guess not really pixel peeping, but you're just looking at the close-up details, you realize that there is level of detail on the track, right? So as you close in on sections of the track, they pop in with a higher quality asset, and it was noticeable. And it's probably even more noticeable at these higher resolutions now, approaching 1080p native, right? And there's no anti-aliasing, right? That's the other thing. Anti-aliasing is gone. So they got rid of bloom. They got rid of anti-aliasing. I'm not sure about the other post-processing effects. Did they get rid of the heat haze and all that stuff? I can't remember. But they did get rid of lighting and stuff like that. There's a dynamic light that follows the ship, right? And that is gone, Well, believe it or not, those types of effects are visible on the PS3. When somebody launches rockets or missiles or sets off a bomb, those sorts of things light up the track. And according to Studio Liverpool in their interview, which is very old at this point, on Eurogamer, still there, 3 pages, right? They talk about all this different thing, these different things about the game. There is no level of detail pop because every section of the track that is visible, to the player is just fully no level of detail, right? It's just one block, right? And some of these blocks are more than 100 or 1.5 million tries, right? So, so there's a lot of detail in these things, and that was just the PS3 version. All of that was beefed up on the PS4, and the PS4 version runs at 4K. It even does 2 players split screen, which Digital Foundry pixel counted and said it's a native 4K. And they're using anti-aliasing. Plus they added parallax occlusion mapping, which of course the PS3 version did not have. They just used traditional normal maps, bump mapping, simple stuff. But now they have parallax occlusion mapping. Now it's 4K native, no dynamic resolution scaling. All of the models, all of the textures, all upgraded, right? The game, the PS3 game is already just, it's so competitive with Fast Fusion. And then you have the PS4 game, which is just straight up, it's better in every way. Even with DLSS, there's just no competing with the native 4K output with the anti-aliasing on top of it. And it's just baffling that there are people that are like, oh yeah. And of course that is the PS4 Pro. But the PS4 is still 1080p 60, native 1080p 60, with the improved models, with the parallax occlusion mapping, still not getting rid of any of the dynamic lights from weapons and power-ups, and the ship's thrusters and stuff like that. So if you're like too close to the track sides, then, your thruster is going to light up the track side. And they might actually get shadowing, I can't remember. They might accurately shade that light source from the thruster on the PS4, where they just used a light for the PS3. And it's just really baffling that there are people out there that are arguing with me over this sort of stuff. It's like, first of all, we have the video evidence. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't even really matter what Studio Liverpool says. They could say their game's rendering 50 trillion polygons at 800 billion FPS and 19 trillion K resolutions or whatever. They could say all this crazy stuff. Oh, we have no level of detail, or our level of detail scaling system is all tessellated, and they could say whatever. But the reality is we have the video evidence. And the video evidence says what they were saying in reality, not the made up hyperbolic stuff that I was talking about, but what they did actually say in that interview. It shows in the actual game. And Digital Foundry I guess they didn't do an actual breakdown of the game, but when they did look back at the game, they never mentioned that the resolution drops dramatically. And it could be that the performance drops that we experience while we play the game is actually not long enough for the lazy resolution scaler to like go, oh, we need to drop the resolution, right? And how low does the resolution drop? I don't know. I guess the only way for me to find out is to actually, you know, connect my system all up and do native, lossless recording. I'd have to clear some hard drive space on my computer to do this and do some recording at 1080p 60. My computer can totally handle that at lossless fidelity and see if I can do pixel counts. Because when I take those screenshots out of the video, I should be able to see if there is a dramatically lowered resolution and stuff like that, particularly when like missiles, bombs, and rockets are all going off at once. Maybe even throwing some mines there for good measure, plus like a quake, distorting the track surface, right? And lighting, that's another dynamic light, right? Is when the quake distorts the entire track surface, it also lights up the area, and it does this weird heat haze effect and stuff like that. And those would be great places to check and see if the resolution is coming down, and also to measure if it is really just being dropped on the horizontal axis, as they claim. Maybe Zone Battle would be a good place to test this as well, even though you could argue that that might be a simpler looking thing. There's like less textures and stuff like that, so maybe it might not drop as much. Yeah, it's some crazy stuff. Just like I'm not sure if I'll do that. It's a lot of work to do that sort of stuff, and I don't have the tools like Brazil Pixel or anything like that, so I would definitely not be able to really test this stuff out. You know what? Brazil Pixel might have already done a video like this. So I'd have to look through and see what PS3 games he's tested. And if he did test Wipeout HD, then I probably don't have to do shit. But if I do decide to do this, right, it would still take me forever. I would still be doing manual pixel counting instead of automated through the DCT, discrete cosine transform that Brazil Pixel is, working on improving. And nobody would trust me, right? Even if I was providing accurate results, nobody would fucking give a shit, because I'm not Digital Foundry. I'm not Brazil Pixel. Well, like, nobody really gives a shit about Brazil Pixel either, which is very unfortunate, because it looks like his technology is measuring up to Digital Foundry standards. And of course, it's like dynamically doing this. It's doing this in real time based on the video. So he puts the video in, and it just looks at the video and is like, this is where the resolution is and stuff. But it has to be lossless video for the discrete cosine transform to work. And that makes sense. It doesn't really make as much sense for Digital Foundry to require lossless video. They could probably use less than lossless video for their frame rate analysis tools. Like, I don't see why you would need that, right? It needs to be lossless video for frame rate analysis. That sounds stupid to me. I mean, I guess there is an argument that some types, if they don't control the video recording, I think there would be problems, because you can turn off some of the frame prediction, parts of the algorithm in MP4 encoding and stuff like that. So you don't have to really worry about the video blending data from two different images. Of course, if you do things losslessly, it won't do that. But if you don't do lossless, you can still turn off those things, so you can have at least something there that is accurate for frame rate analysis. So I don't know why they require lossless video. They probably don't. But yeah, you can kind of finagle some of these properties in OBS and stuff like that. So you can do that, and you can get a clean, high quality result that doesn't need to be lossless for frame rate analysis, but for like the actual real time, what Brazil Pixel is doing, I can't imagine that not requiring lossless video. Like, it has to be pixel perfect. All the colors have to be perfectly represented, or within an inch of MP4's algorithms maximum, right? Because there is just no way that discrete cosine transform method will work properly when you have some pixels that are really huge and other pixels aren't, right? Like you have macro blocking and stuff like that. You know, how are you going to really determine the actual 100 with certainty, right? With good certainty. It's not going to be perfect certainty, right? But with good certainty, how high the resolution of the frame is when you're dealing with all these macro blocking artifacts from MP4 recording. You don't have to worry about that with frame rate analysis because you just need to know that the whole frame has changed, right? So if one frame is radically different than the other, that counts, right? That's you know, you don't need lossless video for that. I don't know why Digital Foundry is so stubborn about that, but you will need lossless video for actually measuring in real time the pixels and stuff like that. And maybe that's why Digital Foundry wants the lossless video, so they can do the accurate pixel counts. But they don't have tools that can do that in real time yet. And I have no idea how any of these people do this. I've thought about trying to script something like this in Blender, so I could just send video through Blender and then I'd have a script that analyzes the video, and then it does all this crazy stuff in real time, even draws the graph and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if people have already done that, right? Like if that's how, like, well, I have Teardrop, but I've never used it. But if I run a script in Blender, you know, then I would feel slightly more confident about it, right? At least I know that if something wrong happens, it's my fault and not, you know, some random on the internet. So there's that. But I don't think I have the skill to do that. Being real, right? I've done some scripting in the past, but it's usually based on other people's code and stuff. So JRPeggy8294, the PS3 version of WipEout was pretty incredible and still looks broadly comparable to Fast Fusion on Switch 2. The PS4 version manages to improve the quality of every element of the PS3 and PS Vita games, because those were also included, cramming them into one collection, the Omega Collection. And it runs at native 4K without motion blur or a fixed checkerboard 4K with, which extends to the two-player split screen mode. It does the checkerboard with motion blur. Additionally, effects are added like parallax occlusion mapping to textures and heat haze, bringing the moment-to-moment visuals up to Fast Fusion's level in every respect. WipEout Omega Collection also offers anti-aliasing standard in all two rendering modes, though if you play on PS4 Pro using a 1080p screen, an additional two fixed 1080p modes are added, mimicking the 4K output using super sample anti-aliasing at 1080p. In all cases, the image is cleaner than in Fast Fusion, and that's another one of those things we're using super sampling. But it's PS4 Pro rendering at 1080p rather than just the PS4, because the PS4 it's just 1080p 60, and it's still 1080p 60 in multiplayer split screen. These games are not the same though. Fast Fusion's engine calculates most lighting in real time, relying less on big textures and probe lighting. Even so, it's very unlikely that Fast Fusion would run worse or at far lower resolutions than the Omega Collection if it were ported to PS4. I'm hoping that Fast Fusion is ported to other devices, including PS4, so that we can really know without a shadow of a doubt where Switch 2 stands on the power ladder. Shin'en has released ports of their titles on other platforms, including PlayStation and Xbox in the past. Some examples are Nano Assault and The Tourist. Another very detailed example of how Switch 2 is demonstrably weaker than the base model PS4 based on existing software instead of some empty promises from a developer porting a mobile-style game from a floundering Japanese publisher. But hey, I suppose the word of a floundering publisher is better than that of a now extinct Studio Liverpool, who left its last word to their software, right? Anywho, I would have left one really long post to cover all of this, but YouTube wouldn't allow it, and you probably wouldn't read it. That's assuming you read any of these. And of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a pretty long comment string without any interjection from anybody else. And it is what it is, but the reality is, all of this is fact-based, right? Like, we have a brand new game on Switch 2 that looks kind of bad. Well, I think that pretty much does it for this video. Till next time.